Hey guys, the following video is an excerpt from a webinar that I gave on the Buddhist concept of Samadhi. It is a Pali word that has a few translations depending on its context, but it can mean one-pointedness or absorption or concentration. Sometimes is how you may hear it described. I really find absorption is the best word for this, and it's really about how in meditative practice you use these different qualities, these different states of mind, these different factors of mind to get really absorbed within anything you want to be absorbed with. It can be breath, it can be walking. And what we can learn from that to create more absorption and really just more enjoyment and more ease in any activity in our life. And the more you kind of practice these factors of mind, the more you kind of grow them, the more you find that contentment or enjoyment is not so conditional upon the activity itself, but it's able to be found in really anything. And so I was really excited to get this out there and also really excited to share it with you all. If you're interested in more of this, please join my Discord. And I'm going to be trying to do webinars like this at least once a month. And yeah, would love to see you there. Great. So yeah, so I'm going to just talk with you guys. That meditation was kind of a soft focus on what I'm going to kind of be discussing this evening. And what I'm talking about and what I posted is something called Samadhi, which is a meditative technique that you utilize a lot in practice. It's a factor of mind that arises while you practice that often gets translated as concentration, but it's not the best translation for it. But I'm going to be kind of explaining what samadhi is. And most importantly, this is going to be kind of part one of two parts where I'm going to talk about just how do we enjoy what we do more? How do we find more contentment, more satisfaction in any stage of any process that we're doing? And part two is going to be more focused on things that you will typically hear about, which is more about how to make things enjoyable or how to make sure that I'm gonna be talking about more like having correct, Davis and I've been working on this, but like having more alignment, having more goals, connecting with where your task is getting you. That's gonna be kind of part two. But for this part, I really want to talk about what is the skill of finding anything enjoyable. How we can, because all kinds of things will never perfectly feel motivating or rewarding or exciting. And so, how can we just start practicing this skill of finding more contentment in whatever it is we find ourselves doing? So, I'm going to talk about this. I'm not a big fan of presentations, so I don't have a presentation or like a slide. So, I'm just going to kind of talk about this for maybe 15, 20 minutes. And then we'll just discuss it because it's just the three of us. So we can just talk about it. Um, so one of the things that happens and that is common is we are very it is very easy to get fixated on what something is delivering to us, to be very future oriented with any of our tasks, be it studying for poker, playing poker, even in our relationships or our work or anything that we're trying to become like do in our lives. We can become so fixated on the thing it gives us that we fail to realize that we have stopped enjoying the thing itself, that we no longer find any contentment or satisfaction or joy in the thing itself. And a lot of people have this, and this is why many people are constantly on this wheel of their lives of trying to find a new thing to do, as though enjoyment and satisfaction is contained within things or activities themselves. But it really isn't. It's contained within us. It's contained with our relationship to that task. And one of the things you discover when you sit long retreat is if you're given any single particular task, if you commit to that task in the right way, anything becomes deeply rewarding, right? So like simply breathing becomes deeply, deeply rewarding. And when you do this for long enough, if you do this for like long periods, if you commit to something for long enough, you can enter such deep, I don't want to say concentration, but absorption with something that it this is called a samadhi state where you're so enthralled with this thing that it is incredibly effortless to continue to just pay that thing your attention. So most common is the breath, but there's other kinds of practices for samadhi. Most common on retreat is just returning to the breath. And I want to talk about samadhi and how it actually shows up in our day-to-day lives, more ordinary states of it, and how we can engage with things with this intention of absorption, with this intention of finding the thing we're doing incredibly intriguing in a way that it doesn't require the thing itself to have any special characteristics that capture our attention. And what are the ways in which we orient ourselves towards it to make things most likely to reward us and be exciting and for us to enjoy doing it. That doesn't mean everything's going to be easy, but it means that where there is contentment to be found in things, we can condition this quality and this practice and this attitude of mind towards things to where we find the satisfaction, the contentment, the whatever there is far easier, that we don't have to go digging for it. And so with samadhi, there are basically everyone has experienced this kind of samadhi state. And a way to put it is actually more like just like when you feel like things are kind of flowing. For me, and I don't know if you guys find this relatable, but one of the most common states where I find myself not needing to get pulled away and like just really enjoying something that I wouldn't think is enjoyable is whenever I put together furniture. It sounds silly, but and I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. Putting together furniture is always something that I hate doing, like, or think about hate doing. It just sounds terrible. But the moment I sit down to do it, I now have this task that I understand. It's just like, it's just going to take as long as it takes. And I actually can't, it's actually quite soothing when I'm just like, I'm just looking at the instructions and I'm just doing the thing. And there's nothing pulling me away to go do anything else. And I suddenly find myself feeling very nourished by this simple act of putting together furniture, of like, I just am doing this. I'm kind of just in the flow of it. And I'm not expecting this to be any more than it is. Like, it's just, I'm putting together furniture, you know? And one of the brilliant things about the historical Buddha, his name was Siddhartha Gautama, he had this ability to go into a state of mind, be so aware of that state of mind, he could just piece it apart of like, these are the things that are happening here. And with these kind of states where you just find this easeful flow and things are just happening, he basically said there were 5 things happening. And in my experience on retreat, these 5 things have been very true. So we're going to talk about those 5 things now. There are Pali, which is the language of the Buddha, that actual words for this. If you guys are interested, I can give you those. But like, I'm going to speak them just like in their English counterparts, which is the first one is you're going to do is one thing, is you're doing one thing. And I want to talk about, I'm going to kind of break down each of these a lot, but one of the things that is most guaranteed to cause you discontentment is trying to do more than one thing at a time. Trying to do more than one thing. So like having, if this idea that like when I create this sense that to just do this isn't enough, I need to do more. Like I need to do more. I need to bring in more things. I need to be showering and listening to a podcast. And, like I need to be doing all of these things. You're making it so much less likely that you're actually able to enjoy any of those one things, any of those single things that you're doing. And it's actually also quite stressful for your brain. Your brain really thrives at doing a single thing very well. And it's very relaxing for it. It's very easeful for it. But the more tasks you add it, evolutionarily, the times where we needed to multitask a lot were, generally speaking, times of great distress. Times where like things were really, it was really an emergency and we really had to stress ourselves. But if you think about like early humans, there was never a need to do anything more than like, I'm just picking fruit, or like, I'm just walking. I don't have any option to do anything but just walk. That's what I'm doing. And so when you intend with purpose, like I'm just going to do one thing, you already start telling your mind, one, this thing matters, and two, we can relax. But that's not enough, because part of what happens when many of us try to do just one thing is all the way that we try to do that one thing actually inclines ourselves to feel like that thing's not enough. So actually, the act of doing one thing starts stressing us out because we feel like we should be doing more. We feel like we should be getting more done, which brings us to the second quality, which is simple contentment. Having this attitude and this idea that we don't need a lot to satisfy us, that to do one thing and to do it carefully is actually enough. And if you haven't sat much retreat or done much meditation, it can feel, there can be this instinct that that is something that either happens or it doesn't. But it's actually something you can do intentionally. You can intentionally shift your mind into a state of, I'm going to just enjoy this. Like, I'm going to do this thing with such care and attention. Like, if I'm pouring coffee, I can just pour the coffee with my attention. Like, this thing matters. Like, this act matters to me. And like, this moment matters. And resist the urge to believe I need to be doing more than this. Um, I have ADHD. I don't know if that resonates with either one of you guys, but I have ADHD. My mind constantly is trying to tell me I need to do more, right? That this act isn't enough. The thing that I've noticed though is when I buy into that, I actually fuel the energy in me, the restless energy. I'm putting fuel on the fire for this feeling of I need to do more, and it just kind of spins up into mania where I can't focus on anything. The more that when I feel this sense that I need to do more, I respond to it with this sense of I'm going to do this with care. I actually bring balance to my mind. My mind evens out. It actually, I feel calmer and I feel like steadier. And so make starting to practice in your life, finding where does it feel like in my mind to make this thing feel like enough. If you're getting ready to play poker, what does it feel like to grab my mouse and feel it like this is enough? What does that feel like? And to start doing that more and more and more and more, you will start carving the groove in your mind where this simple contentment, this sense of simple contentment is actually very easy to access, as I can just go straight to it at any moment. Those are the most important two things that I want to emphasize about samadhi in daily life, which is do one thing and aimed for it to be enough. The other three are just bonuses. But the other three are super important if you ever want to get into extremely deep absorption with something. So those two I have found can get you into what we might call ordinary samadhi, the furniture putting together samadhi, right? Where I'm just in flow though. I'm just doing this and it's enough. I just feel fine to sit here and just put together furniture. So the next one though, which can come up, which we can use in things that we're going to be where we don't need to be shifting our focus. So let's say, for example, I'm going to be studying, or I'm going to be playing poker. Um, and there's a lot going on in playing poker, but there's let's use like studying, or let's just use practicing meditation. Let's just use that. Like we're just practicing meditation. What the next one is that the next two are what are called, the Pali words are vichara and vitaka, but it's aiming and sustaining. This idea that I'm going to have an aim, I'm going to have an intention to connect with this thing. So if I, again, in the guided exercises I guided us on, it could be the breath. I'm just going to aim. My intention is to aim at the breath, but again, with this measure of simple contentment. And then with that aim, I'm going to sustain. When I get distracted, when my mind tries to pull me off, I'm going to say, no, I'm coming back to this. And you can do this as well in poker study or any, like, again, I'm ADHD. So the amount of times where I'm studying poker and suddenly I'm like, I should be watching this episode of this that I haven't caught up on The Bachelorette. I need to watch The Bachelor, whatever. I like The Bachelorette. Don't roast me. But the amount of times that my mind just suddenly injects an idea that has all this energy to it of like, all this intention of like, oh no, we should do this. To develop this attitude of like, no, I'm going to give this activity my commitment, my and we have to be very careful because this is the area I talked about the first two first because if you were in an Eastern context, if you were in India or something like that, they actually start with these two. These are the first two they teach. But to Western minds, you tell them aim and sustain, and they really get this like effortful sense of like, okay, I'm just gonna like bear down on this thing, like my breath, with just like all the intensity I have. Um, but it's not that. It's this sense of treating the thing you're spending your time with a sense of loyalty, with a sense of, so like, I'm doing this and I've committed to this and I have some loyalty towards this act. And other ideas, other things might come into my mind, but I've already cultivated this sense that this activity is enough. So I have, so let's say we say I'm going to study for an hour. In that hour, I'm going to have a loyalty to this act. I'm going to have loyalty to doing this. And doing that, again, over time, your mind slowly learns, okay, when I aim at something, when I tell myself this is what I'm doing, your mind slowly learns that then that is what we're going to do, right? The more you allow yourself to be pulled off and entertain and just like drag off into these things, your mind, again, it's actually stressful. Your mind, it doesn't become clear to your mind what's worth doing. And these random thought patterns that pull you off, you condition your mind to believe that's worth doing. That's finding something that can distract me, can pull me off, and I can start spinning my mind around doing this thing. I'm conditioning that kind of activity where the more and more and more that we just say, okay, I'm just going to do this one thing. I'm going to do it as though it matters. I'm going to do it with care. And I'm going to aim and sustain my attention on this thing. I'm going to do it with a sense of loyalty. Again, slowly your mind starts to collect around activities more often. More often when you sit down and say, okay, I'm going to do this, your mind will slowly be like, okay, we are doing this. And that feeling is incredibly nourishing. It doesn't feel effortful. It doesn't feel like I have to like make myself do this. It just feels, your mind is just, this is enough. And I can commit with this. I can stick with this. And the last quality is basically what happens when with anything is kind of recognizing that the thing itself you're giving your attention to and your loyalty to is like amazing and beautiful and interesting. And so you can think about it when let's say we're just studying, we're just looking at a solver, to have moments of being actually amazed wherever you can find it. It can be in an actual solution output, but it can also just be in something far simpler. Again, going with the line of simple contentment, we can constantly remind ourselves that, like, I'm seeing color and I'm looking at this screen, like all I'm seeing, and like all of this is coming in. And this is like just this experience of seeing is incredible. Like this is amazing. Like, and I can see the objects of my attention as amazing. When I touch my mouse and I feel it and I commit to like feeling what that's like, the sense, the feeling itself is kind of mysterious. Like, how do I feel this? And then so the fifth thing is basically like this sense of appreciation and recognition of like the beauty of the thing that you're doing. That comes about pretty naturally once you do the first four. Once you just commit to giving something your attention, doing it with loyalty and doing it with care, slowly you just start to appreciate more just the inherent object of your attention more. And it's not about what else is coming next. This moment, this object of your attention is incredible, whatever you're putting your attention to. And again, as you do all of these five, as you just constantly say one thing's enough, again, what you're training your brain to do is just when you sit down to do a task, to collect. And that's really a better translation of the word samadhi is collectedness, is your mind just collects around it and just says, I'm going to do this with all of me. And you you can't really, it's not realistic to experience deep, deep, deep samadhi in everyday life because it requires taking all of those to the, 100th degree where you have literally one thing you're doing. I'm just breathing. And I'm literally just breathing for the next 10 days. And like that's, but but what I have found is using these five features of mind, particularly as counterbalances when I'm feeling very restless. If I have this like restless energy that's causing my mind to scatter, instead of just reacting to that and believing that there's getting caught up in this sense and being like, no, I do need to do more. I do need to, you know, get moving or do all this stuff. Actually doing the opposite at times where it's like, okay, I feel this restlessness. I feel myself kind of wanting to do more, wanting to, make my mind do a lot more and saying, okay, can I just do one thing, do it with care? Can I just for a moment, like when I get up, if I'm going to get up and if I'm feeling restless and I'm going to get up and pace or something, instead of just pacing in my mind spinning, can I stand up? And as I stand up, can I do that and feel it like it matters? Like this moment is not a throwaway moment of my life. And like feel that and walk. And more often when I'm walking to things, and I try to practice this kind of attention as much as I can. If I'm walking down the street, I'm trying to practice all of these qualities. And to learn to walk like there's nowhere to go is an incredible way of cultivating your mind or just respond of just how we do activities, right? If your mind starts understanding that the way we do activities is as though it is just for this activity's purpose and it's not for some, future thing. A metaphor that I've heard that I think really resonates with this is if you hate gardening, but you really want tomatoes, you're going to get really shitty tomatoes, right? Like if you just can't stand the dirt and the process and the thing and far fewer, you're going to be like, you're just gonna be like, fine, like I'm going to push through this and just do it. But if you love gardening, you know, and it comes with tomatoes, like you're going to get so many more tomatoes and they're going to be so much better. And I think it's really easy to forget that we want to do anything we do and we can practice enjoying it. We can practice telling our minds that it's not just for the tomatoes. It's not, I'm not just playing poker for the money. I'm not just playing poker for these things. I'm also doing it because in this moment, which is all that exists, this moment of playing poker, I want to enjoy it. I want to be happy. And when you do that, and when it's this moment's enough, then you will find it also comes with other great things. It also might come with money, and it also might come with, but studying and striving and working and playing just to get the result, it never quite is as fulfilling. But you also aren't going to learn as much. You're not going to get back as much, as than if you're really engaged with it, as though that's all you need to do in this moment. All right, guys, that was Samadhi. I hope you found it useful. Please comment anything that you enjoyed, and if there's anything you'd like to hear more from me, let me know. And I'm gonna leave a link to my Discord in the chat, and also a link to my website. We can sign up for my newsletter, and yeah, hope to see you around.